Thank you so much. It's an honour to be here. I'm humbled. When they asked me to talk about my life, I thought, who wants to know about it? Then I thought, well, if I'm interviewing staff, when I did interview staff, I like to know where they came from. So I'm going to take you on a journey where I came from and share the things I've learnt along the way, which is many. Because I've got to condense 80 years into 30 minutes, it'll be a fairly quick trip. I was born in Kingston, Brisbane, which is now Logan City, 24th of January 1940. The hottest day in history, 109.8. My parents, they got married in 1933. They waited 7 years to have me and 7 years for my brother, so I'm not sure what they used for birth control, but anyway. But I think they were, in a way, they were the perfect parents. My father was the manager of the pig farm. And they were just good, Christian, decent people. They were good to each other. They had great family values. Dad said his prayers at his bed every night. And always told me about Luke's parable about the wealthy man who said, "My barns are full." And God took it all away overnight. And I've since learned a bit about the Stoics, and the Stoics mural is the tulip and the hourglass and the skull. And the tulip's growth, and the hourglass is time, and the skull is death. If you go to a mosque, there's two themes all the time, is health and time, two things you can't buy. So the farm was owned by Mr. Watson, who lived at Yeronga, and he'd come down in his Daimler every month. He had two kids, two boys, Jim and George. Jim became quite a leading doctor, and George became the leading authority in the world on Coleridge, not Mark but Samuel Taylor. And he became a Don at Cambridge. So they were older than me, but he would always encourage me. He'd help me with my maths, and always gave me a shilling if I came top. So I really look at R.G. Watson and think what a major influence he was. At the age of 14, I started at Salisbury High School. Now, Salisbury High School then was a brand new school, and Robert Mackey was picked as the principal, and he handpicked the staff. And Robert Mackey got the best teachers in Queensland at Salisbury High School. Now, it drew the kids from Yeronga and Junction Park. Kids now, I think, would have gone to grammar and church in Terrace, but they were sort of, it was the poor baby boom families about 1954. So we had very, very, very bright kids and very, very bright teachers. And I went from coming top and getting a shilling from Mr. Watson to coming around 10th or 11th in a very bright class. So I thought I was pretty dumb. I got 4 A's and 4 B's in senior, and 2 A's, 2 B's and 2 C's in junior, and 2 A's, 2 B's and 2 C's in senior. When you got to Salisbury, they split you into those who'd played sport and those who hadn't played sport. Well, I'd never played sport much. So we were put in the losers team, and worse still, I was clumsy. There was even a special clumsy area, so I was the clumsy kid. Now, one thing my parents always said to me is, don't expect too much. When you look at where we are, you can't go too far from that. My father was born in 1905, so in the Great Depression he was about 25, so he knew it. The Great Depression was on their mind. And I was always taught, get a secure job and do your work and keep your nose down. Of course, being on a farm, you've got jobs. You'd come home, you'd milk the cows, collect the eggs. So on the farm, you just contributed. Coming up on a farm, you know that you reap what you sow. So I think it was a wonderful foundation. Now, given I thought I was dumb, when I left school at 18, I joined the Bank of New South Wales because it was the oldest bank and therefore the less likely place to go broke. They sent me straight to Cunnamulla. I learnt to drink and smoke and everything out there. I started doing courses, and I enjoyed doing courses, and I started to do well in the courses. And the bank sent me down to Stones Court at 21 and as the Holland Park agency officer. Within 4 months, I got so much business, I've made it a full branch, which meant I was being noticed. And then at that stage, I'm 21. Oh, I must say something else, I forgot. At 13, my best friend's father was killed. He was a farmer, Ashley Armstrong at Logan Lee. He thought he was putting petrol on a fire, and a kerosene, it was petrol, and he was killed on the spot with an exploding petrol drum. And that's when I learnt that people can go quickly. In 1961, my mother walked out of the house and never came back. She had a stroke and fell dead. Now, but at that stage, my brother's 14, my father was about 61, she was 54. And I had to take over. You know, I told her father, I told her son, I told her friends. And that for me has been again, I know that people die quickly. You know, anyone can be gone tomorrow. That's why I like that parable of Luke's. Anyway, so then the bank transferred me to International Division, where I worked for 6 years doing foreign exchange. My typist was Carol Burns, the actress. Now, Carol died recently, but I was about 23, Burns was about 15, and she was great fun. So Carol and I were at the great fun there in the International Division. And then I was transferred upstairs. Also, I was a great studier. And the bank said, we will offer anyone who wants to do the chance to do a rostrum course. Everyone else said, I don't want to do a rostrum course. I said, I'll do the rostrum course. So I started to learn public speaking. My first speech, my knees went like that, seriously. I couldn't move, but I sort of learned it. Then the bank said, we need someone to go to the staff training school and teach that once a month and give a lecture on foreign exchange. One person volunteered me. Well, I figured you're in the bank car, you're being chauffeur-driven, you can sort of strut your stuff. It was great fun, so I loved that. I'm getting more public speaking skills. And then, what happened then was that I met a suburban lawyer who offered me a job. Now, he said, I want you to come and work for me as a conveyancer office manager. That was a big wrench, because it had been my security blanket was the bank. I'd been taught to have the secure job, but eventually I succumbed and I became a conveyance office manager. And I was doing law, and I loved doing law, but I didn't like the work. So after a couple of years, I chucked it. And then I found out that no one hires in November. So now I'm a half-qualified lawyer, second-hand bank officer. No one wants you. Oh, sorry, I missed something else. I got married for the first time. I was 24. It was wrong from the start. It's been annulled. It was one of those things anyway, but I've got to put that in context. So anyway, I then got a job in a factory, and that taught me something. You don't want to work in a factory. What it did do, I can walk into a factory now, I can empathise with the people totally. I know what it's like, you know. So then I thought, what am I going to do? And my then wife, I'll go back to my notes now, I think. So I'm now 30. I'm out of work. I went to All Staff Employment Service to try and get on their books after a job. And Reg Maxwell, the boss, said, oh, well, he said, I've got a defunct male placement division. I reckon you could run it. So he gave me the goal of running and building up his defunct male division in All Staff, and I did that. We made it the biggest in Queensland, which I sort of proved I was a pretty good business getter. I also studied accountancy because I had my law and my banking. It wasn't too hard. I'll never forget doing tax, because I did the tax exam for the ASA, and I did it pretty easily. I thought it's too easy. I went back, looked over it. I don't know, it's easy, shouldn't be. Walked out halfway through. 4 months later, when the results came out, I went down to their office in Wharf Street. Have I passed? She said, yes. I'd cracked 99%, the highest tax in history for tax law. It wasn't so much my skill about tax, I just think I got an exam, I knew all the questions. So now I'm 32, I'm at All Staff, and I'm thinking, well, it's a pretty good life. I've got a corner office at Bowman House there on the corner of Edward and Addai Street. It's going all right. And my wife then said, you can do better than that. Here's an ad, you better apply for this job. And the job was as the assistant to the MD of a very small listed property company. In fact, it was so small, their total staff was 7. And I got the job, and to put it mildly, he was very hard to work for. He was very street smart, very, very smart, but impossible to work for. But his board included Gordon Miles. Now, Gordon Miles is one of 3 people who have a major effect on my life. Gordon Miles' father founded Thomas Miles and Co Accountants. Gordon and the late Barry Thornton were in partnership, and many of you would have known Barry, of course. Gordon became my substitute father, and he'd protect me from the MD's excesses, you know. And Gordon, until he died, he was my father figure for 37 years. So we built properties and we leased properties, and I got some great, and I met Stephen Conroy. We were boys around the traps then, Stephen, remember? And but in the end, I couldn't take it. So I'm getting out of here. So looking for ads because I wasn't going to leave the job. The basic rule: you don't leave a job until you got one, right? I'd learnt that because I sort of started like a blank tape. I keep learning, and the ad was for the state manager of a finance company through a recruiting agency. So I rang the agency, had an interview, and they told me the company. It happened, I knew the guy in the company, and I rang him. Well, this finance company had a poisonous culture. The purpose of the ad was to see if there was anyone in Brisbane worth replacing the boss with. That was the whole purpose of it. So he didn't know about it, so of course he rang the agency and abused the agency, and they rang me and abused me. How dare you go direct to the client? You know, anyway, so I didn't know you couldn't do those things. Anyway, but they did start a job for me. So I started in the finance company as head of joint venture subdivisions and developments. And my job was to find joint venture partners, and the finance company would put up all the money at full rates of interest and take half the profits. Pretty hard deal, I thought. And I started doing it. But the culture was poisonous, like staff suggestion time. This is now 1975. I said, well, look, you've got a typing pool full of women, all with 4 carbon followers on manual typewriters. We could get electric typewriters and save probably 5 or 6 staff members. Well, that was too much. What won it, you ready for this? We all go to the Commonwealth Bank and pinch a money box. That goes on our desk. When we make a private phone call, 10 cents go in the money box. That was their thinking. I remember when they had builders' functions in the office, we were instructed to get a Haig's Dimple bottle and fill it with a cheap whiskey and put it in a teaspoon of sherry. Apparently a teaspoon of sherry makes it taste like Haig's Dimple. And make sure the air was turned off at 6 p.m. sharp so they wouldn't stay long and eat too much. Well, I was doing okay there, but then one Friday, I mean, I've always been conscientious. I went out, saw my clients and went home. So I arrive on Monday, and my diary is marked, you can't go out on Fridays, we can't trust you. So that was the culture. And I said, I've had this joint. It so happens, I picked up a book called Think and Grow Rich. Anyone read it here? Anybody? Yes. Change your life? I picked up that book, and the hands that put that book down weren't the ones that picked it up. That was the key to the door. For 35 years, I've knocked on the door and wanted and craved, and then the book. And I made 2 vows. One, I would spend the rest of my life promulgating the Think and Grow Rich principles, which I have done. And secondly, within 100 days, I'd start my own business. So I went into the business with a joint venture builder. I had the accounting skills, the sales skills, you know, and we started the real estate business and building business. So we started. Well, it might sound great, but some of these things are easier in the contemplation. I mean, we opened the office and we put ads in the paper, and guess what? Nobody rang up. And nobody knocked on the office door. And my partner's getting very itchy and wondered what he's done. So one Sunday, I got bored and drove out where we'd had some houses built, and I saw a couple looking in the window. I sold the house to them. And I said, right, that's how you do it. So I had 100 Corfleet signs made, Camden homes, that big, and got out Saturday morning and nailed them on 100 telephone posts with arrows, and that street became full of people. And I think that was the first open house in Brisbane that I know of. It's amazing, isn't it? And we just sold and sold and sold, and people copied us. And I realised later that it was $100 per post if Sequeb caught you. So there you are. So it was a very high risk thing, but I was too dumb to know that anyway. So then the Dean Trimble, we were in Underwood, and Dean Trimble, the local hairdresser, had a column in the newspaper, which she paid for, about hair tints. And I thought, we need a real estate column. So I bought space in the Albert News, and every week I'd write the 400-word column. It's the old story. First few months, nothing happens. It's like compound interest. As time goes, things happen, and people started to read it and notice it. Then I hired a PR person who got me to meet the paper. And I got a column in the Career Mode called Key Money. Now I'm about 35. It's Key Money. And the TV station started noticing me. Have you got a clip there for me? This is me in 1975.
And that's why real estate advisor Noel Whittaker is singing the praises of the new federal scheme for first home buyers of either new or existing homes.
Because for the first time in the country's history, every family can afford a house even if they haven't got a deposit. Because a person who has a single income cannot pay rent and save a deposit.
I sort of changed a bit, hadn't I? But that was my first television stuff. And I spent the next 5 years after I read this book, and I suggest you read it, I heard everyone, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Zig Ziglar, Earl Nightingale. For 5 years I absorbed all the success principles. I discovered that probably the Stoics were the first, but Samuel Smiles wrote this in 1850, Self-Help. It sold millions of copies and translated to many languages. So Self-Help was probably the original recent self-help book. It's amazing, isn't it? So there is nothing I talk about's new. It's just the old principles. So anyway, so we sort of did that. Then the REIQ sort of noticed us, and they said, righto, we've picked 6 people in the REIQ who've got potential to be leaders. If you'll pay your way to Canberra, we'll give you a 2-day course with Doug Maloof, who was quite a famous trainer. And 3 people said, haven't they got a hide? Why should we pay our way to Canberra? And 3 people said, yeah, let's do it. I came back, and the ABC rang saying, we want to do a talk back with Ursula. And one of the things that Doug Maloof had taught us was, if you give a speech, you must have a handout, which is why I've given you all a book today. And I said to the ABC, well, really, if we're doing this, I've seen how you do the stars or the star charts. I think we need a budgeting thing in the paper. They said yes. So now I've got the paper and the ABC both promoting me. And we did the broadcast. On Monday, my phone rang with 2 guys in Brisbane. We heard you on the radio, saw what was in the paper. we want to write a book on money. It'll be an advertorial book, but we'll pay you $5,000 to write the book on money. I said, righto, I'll do that. So I wrote the book on money for them, and guess what? It never went ahead. Guess what? I kept all the copyright and all the material. So now I've got the grains of the book. How about that? So anyway, then after that, what did we do after that? Things kept going. Then, yes. In December 1977, I said, I've had this marriage, I can't do any more. Now, to be successful, you must create the vacuum. The vacuum brings in the other stuff. I said to my wife, I'm sorry, but it's not going to work ever. And we had a very amicable parting. That was in December. On 1st of April 1978, 40 years ago, on Easter Day, I met Geraldine. How about that? Now, Geraldine, stand up, Geraldine. Stand up, come on, stand up. Come on, stand up, give her a cheer. Give her a cheer. Come on, I met Geraldine. Who came from a very strong Catholic family with a very strong Catholic mother. Now, looking back, I can see why her mother hated me so much. I mean, she was 25 and I was 38, and I was Anglican and separated, you know, and she'd been keeping her prized bride for better than me. And Peter Dillon came along, so it's 40 years ago, Peter, and there was a lot of angst, because we go to Mass, I was doing all the stuff to become a Catholic, and whenever the peace sign came, I'd go like that too, and she'd go like that to me, because she would go like that. But anyway, but I can see the problem. But I discovered that Geraldine has a rule book. Now, I never had a rule book, but Geraldine knows you can't wear that with that, and you can't say that to that. Anyway, so we've lived with Jerry's rule book for the last 40 years, haven't we? So anyway, one of the great moments was it was Palm Sunday, and I rang Peter Dillon. What do you do? So you just grab a branch off a tree and bring it in. So, all right. So I duly went to the office. There was a traveller's palm about as big as this, and I lobbed off a branch, and I walk into church like Jesus Christ entering with the brim, and all these wussy Catholics have got these little tiny pine needles. I think even Geraldine's mother laughed, I think, at that stage, and else was. And Peter Dillon said, how well has he accepted his faith? He's a fine young man. So now I'm 40. I got married. We got married in 1980. 80. We had a child 11 months later. Murray was counting viciously, but she was okay. There was enough months that it was going to work. So now I'm 40, and we dissolved the real estate business. My business partner really didn't like having partners, so I kept real estate. He kept the building company. And we decided we would need to start a mortgage business, because those days you couldn't get finance. So our little business is growing. And then from there, I started giving seminars. I got buyers. First of all, we tried to get buyers by having them come by bus loads. So I'd hire a bus and take all our buyers in one go to look at different properties, and then one day the bus got stuck under a bridge, as they do. Anyway, all these things happen to me, I don't know, anyway. And then I'm giving an investment seminar, and on a fateful day, a little blonde in the front row put her hand up to buy a house. Stand up, Cheryl. Stand up, Cheryl. Cheryl McNaught. There are two women here today. Stand up. Give her a big clap. There are three people. I'm here because of three people: Gordon Miles and Geraldine and Cheryl. Cheryl and I were partners for 30 years. So they had a major thing. And so Cheryl and I started, we had a partner, but he didn't share our values, so we got rid of him. That's all right. Anyway, so in the mortgage business, they were the days when money was about 16%. We got a ring from these American guys, Nick and Don. We got finance at 7%. Oh yeah, US dollars, no Aussie dollars. Wow. No exit fee, no exit fee. Now rates are 15, they're offering 7% in Aussie dollars, no exit fee. You wouldn't, well, you got to take it, wouldn't you? All they wanted was $250 per application fee and 1% on settlement. How about that? We were suspicious, weren't we, Cheryl? But we did it, and Cheryl worked. I was on a boat trip lecturing by that stage, and Cheryl worked very, very, very hard. And we had about 200 or 300 million, I think, of applications approved, and then they tried to change the rules. Oh, not settlement, approval. Hey, hang on. No, not approval. Anyone can forge an approval letter. Settlement. So it was a stalemate. I said, right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I've got a 500,000 application in there. I'll pay the 5,000 up front, and if that works, then I'll let the others go through. Otherwise, I made myself the guinea pig. And of course they did, and they fled. Once they got my $5,000, they were gone. I remember Don claimed to be a barrister from Arizona, and he even showed me his barrister's card, so that was true. Through my real estate connections, I got his address and rang his wife and said, your husband's a criminal, he's going to be charged. And about a minute she's on the phone to him. And what did they eventually found them, didn't they, carrying in some cheap motel. But I was very proud of the fact that we kept our name. Then I got mixed up in a shopping centre development. Now, there's a basic rule here. If you go into business with a man of straw and it goes well, he takes half, right? If it goes belly up, you cop the lot. So my builder partner and I and this other bloke went into business. The other bloke was certainly a man of straw. We built a shopping centre at Victoria Point. Now, development's high risk, isn't it, Stephen? And I know there's wealthy developers, but there's a lot of developers who are broke. It was 13 shops. This guy managed to hire the worst architect in Australia. I have since discovered that a butcher shop needs a back door because you can't bring meat in the front door. He forgot about the back door. I discovered that a hot bread shop needs a certain height. It wasn't high enough. I discovered a newsagent needs a place to unload the papers. It didn't have it. And Merv Generick, the councillor from Redden Council, pinched the post office for his own shopping centre. Now I've got 3 young kids. We have $1 million debt at 22%, interest rolling up, and we can't lease a shop or sell a shop. It was scary, seriously scary, because you can't get out. I mean, because they were unsaleable, that was the point. On that fateful day, which is in the film, Think and Grow Rich, which I talk about, I knelt down, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, did some figuring. If we sell half our assets, I can just keep the house. And Geraldine said, we can lose the house, do not lose your good name. I'll never forget that, that's what she said, didn't you? Because I think your good name is the best thing you've got. So, by that stage, I was wealthy. I'd never need to work again. And God got me straight back to work. Straight back to work. So we sold most of our assets. We kept the house and stuff, but it was a big lesson. Development's high risk, always. So now it's 80. So I needed a bit of a break, so I did a Vision Quest course. See, everything you do is life-changing potentially. And at the Vision Quest course, it was live-ins 5 days, about 16 people. You had to do a meditation on what they would say about you at your funeral. And like a bolt of lightning, it came down to me that my mission on earth was to help ordinary people prosper by financial education. It came like a bolt of lightning. I've stuck on those rails ever since, and I've prospered with it. And I think the greatest things are calling, I think. I was reading a book called The Dark Side of Wealth. And The Dark Side of Wealth is written by a psychiatrist who has clients who are left billions. And leaving billions to someone with no calling or no sense of purpose is very dangerous. And as she says in that book, blessed is the man who's got a calling. And I've got a calling to help people. And I'm not saying this self-servingly, but that's my calling. Anyway, so then I decided to write a book. Well, sorry, by this stage I was on 4BC. And Cheryl was on 4BC too, I think. And a lady called and said, look, Noel, I love what you talk about on the radio, love what you write in the paper. Is there a book? I said, righto, I'll search the bookstores and I'll find your book. Well, there was nothing. There were some American books that were, you know, how to buy 100 homes, nothing down, and there was big, thick books, but there was nothing. So I'll write the book. I said that. And you see, I had the material, didn't I, from the other failed venture. And I remember it was Boxing Day 85 after the Vision Quest course. Geraldine said, you'll start the book. I said, what? Geraldine said, you will start the book. Okay. Now, a book's too hard to start. No one can start a book. But what you can start is 30 chapter headings. It's the old gold trick, you break it down into small steps. So I wrote down 30 chapter headings and I started writing the book. And like all authors, you go through a sense of despair, but you get back to it. And by December 86, the book was finished. Big untidy manuscript. Now I got to find a publisher. So took it around a couple of publishers. Oh God, there's too many books out there and money anyway. Nobody's going to read that. And Gordon Miles said to me, there's a guy named Les Padman, owns Billabong Press. I'll speak to Les. So we rang up old Les. Les said, well, I'll get it read. The reader said, I think it's good. He said, I can't afford to publish it, but what I can do, if Noel will bear the cost, I'll distribute it and put my name on it. And it became Australia's best-selling book, this book. Now, we've got a clip. I've got two clips. The first clip I missed, I'll just show you because that's...
So what are the benefits going to be for the home buyer? What's the difference this time? What are they going to notice?
What it means for the first time, there's no savings requirement, which means that the average person who's got $1,000 or $2,000 can get into a house.
Okay, on the next one.
You're not alone in your desire to make and keep that magic $1 million. Financial advisor and columnist Noel Whittaker spends many hours a week answering correspondence and has built a career out of setting people along the right track of keeping their hard-earned pay and making it work.
I think people basically want to know how to make money in a hurry, and it's not possible. I think people now have more money than before, and of course there's a much wider range of investment avenues open than ever before.
That's interesting you say that because a lot of people say it's pretty hard to become a millionaire these days, times are tough, that sort of thing, but you disagree?
Yes, but there are more and more millionaires. But the whole thing is people don't need to be a millionaire. I mean, no one needs $1 million to be happy. But most people think $1 million is too big and they won't go for it. Yet they could end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars, which would be ample for them.
So that show was picked up, you know, it sold 1 million copies. It was like Da Vinci Code squared. And they'd fly me to Sydney. I had a morning show on Channel 10 with Joan McGuinness, who became Lady Hardy. James Hardy married her. It was great fun. Geraldine Doog was on that with us. I was in the Sydney Morning Herald, the Age, everywhere. So now I'm 50 and we're back on track. How about that? So then I did a whole new world open. Then, I mean, Cheryl was running the business. I mean, we had a great partnership because Cheryl ran the business and I was the rainmaker. And I think it worked very well, didn't it? It worked very well. And I loved, so I've just had a couple of funny speeches. I love getting out on the traps. I gave a speech at Walker and all the old greys just sitting at Walker, and it was a wet, sort of a wet morning, they're all in their riding boots. We're chatting away. I said, what do you blokes do with your surplus money? We stick it in super. I said, gee, super? Superannuation? No, superphosphate. You know, it was the Walker story. And I discovered, well, I love catching scams. So in the big ones, there was all these schemes. There was the aeroplanes. The books are on the table there. There's been scams forever. And I think Joker was a great lesson. It's a lesson to all of us, that you paid me $150 and I give you a Joker ticket and $50 goes to Joker and you sell to three of your friends at $150 and you've got your money back. Then they sell to three of their friends, they sell to three of their friends. Within 10 turns, you've got 1 billion people on the list. So I exposed Joker, and it was becoming very popular. So I took a Channel 7 television crew down to the Tweed Heads RSL to address the audience with a whiteboard why it could not possibly work. Now, I've learnt now why a politician should never address an angry mob. I was booed off the stage. Would work for Auntie Daisy. Why is a wealthy bloke like you stopping us getting rich? It's my money, I'll do what I like. So it didn't work. You can't address an angry mob, it's not possible. They won't listen to you. But we did our best. And then there was Wattle. I'm very proud that I got Jeffrey Robert Dexter in jail. Wattle was fleecing people. One of my best friend's daughter was about to invest in Wattle. I rang ASIC. They said, oh, gee, no, it's a bit difficult because it's a partnership. And just by fate, again, this is God working, Archbishop, a woman dropped in a brochure at the Gold Coast from a company. And I read Greg Towns with ASIC, and Greg said, right. And we got Dexter in jail. Now, half the AFP are investing with him. So I saved the other half of the Australian Federal Police from being fleeced as well. So we got Joker. I've got many, many others I've got. I've caught a lot, I can tell you. But it's difficult because, you know, I don't like bureaucracies. I found bureaucracies are ineffective. And I ring ASIC. Like I was on the George and Paul show recently, last year, and Paul Kidd said, oh, he said, my sister wants to invest with the Bondi mob, this Courtney Trading, offering 10% a month. I said, well, 10% a month, you know it's got to be a con. So I rang up ASIC. Oh, well, put it in writing, you know, put it in writing. I said, look, I'll go in as a secret shopper. No, you can't do that. You know, 18 months later, they finally wound them up. You know, that's what ASIC takes. Anyway, the book came out in 87, the crash was 87, right? This is on Meet the Press, October 87, with Paul Bongiorno asking if the end of the world has come, which I hear every time there's a crash. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Whittaker, for joining us. Well, is the advice in your book made irrelevant or out of date by what happened this week?
No, that book's based on age-old principles and they never change.
Well, what are those principles?
Well, I think there are only 3 investment avenues, and that's money, real estate and shares. Now, and the bulk of your investment should be spread between those 3 areas. You can guarantee one thing. If you can leave your money in the bank, within 10 years, it's lost half its value anyway.
True, isn't it? True. Anyway, so then I thought, right, now, next thing I needed to do was to do a do-it-yourself wealth kit. So I'll just put the next little clip on.
And when it comes to finances, most of us need to know a whole lot more, I think, although I think we're deluged also with information these days. Now, the author of the bestseller Making Money Made Simple says, how much you know can affect how much you have. And he's got a kit, a do-it-yourself wealth kit. Noel Whittaker's here, though, this morning. Good morning to you, Noel.
The whole thing is that in this country, the house is the only asset that's free of capital gains tax. And I think for most people, you go out and you buy a house, and then you invest, and you pay the house off as quickly as possible, and then you invest the mortgage payments you don't need to make anymore.
So the smart thing always when buying property, living in it, pay it off as quickly as possible.
Yeah, because then, as the kit shows, the way compounding works, the quicker you start, the more you have at the end.
That was a sensational failure. It was $100. There was a CD-ROM, an audio tape and 2 books, and nobody wanted to buy it unless they opened the packet. And the bookstores wouldn't let them open the packets, so anyway. So there you are. But everything doesn't work. So anyway, moving on from there, we then, the book then became the bestseller in South Africa, bestseller in New Zealand, bombed in Britain. Now the bombs were so stupid, I said, what the book has to have is big print and plenty of white spaces. It's got to have a high-profile co-author. Like in South Africa, we had Magnus Haystack, the Joburg Star finance writer. So they picked George Mackay, a Scotch bloke no one had ever heard of, who'd never owned a car. They saved money by minuscule print, and they launched in August. All of Europe's on holidays in August. Anyway, that was a disaster. Anyway, then we thought I was encouraged to go to Malaysia. Now, my kids' book, the book for kids, has me as a pig farmer's son, but in Malaysia I was changed to a poultry farmer's son. It was going to be a big thing. We're going to have the finance minister, the leading stockbroker, and the leading valuer, and me in a seminar. It was all set to go incredibly well. You can see on the next tape, sort of the publicity, and you'll notice on this tape my speech slows down, and she doesn't understand a word. But look, you got the next one for me? Last one?
Tonight we welcome Noel Whittaker to Money Matters. Welcome, Mr. Whittaker.
Great to be here. It's a wonderful country you've got.
Thank you. Now, you have a formula called the guaranteed secret of success. Can you share with us the secret?
Yes, the guaranteed secret of wealth. And it's based on a premise that everybody, no matter where they live or how much they earn, does the same thing. They get paid and they pay all their bills and they spend what's left over. That's why somebody who's paying off a house gets the house paid off, because they have to pay the house cost. Now, the secret of wealth is to have the investment money taken out before it gets to your hands to spend it. And that works every time.
Really?
There you are. That's the last video. You've seen me getting older and better dressed, I would think, in all those videos. I was speaking slower. Anyway, next morning, paper headlines, the stockbrokers in handcuffs taken away for extortion. The finance minister then couldn't come because that would be a loss of face, and the seminar collapsed. But that was my Malaysian episode. Anyway, now it's 2000, I'm 60. The business is firing. We've got 100 on the staff. It's all doing well. A couple of interesting things happened then. I met Malcolm Turnbull. We had a chat. He said to his people, you know, Noel's taught me more about superannuation in 5 minutes than I learnt in my life. He said, I want Noel to go to Canberra to front the superannuation inquiry. So I'd never been to a superannuation inquiry, so I fly down to Canberra, I'm like this. Now, you sit in a big room and there's 5 politicians you've seen the TV with their names on, and I'm behind Treasury, so I'm sitting watching Treasury. There are 8 Treasury blokes with suitcases, not briefcases, suitcases. Treasury go, and I walk in like this. Where's your book? I don't need any notes. I could talk about super. What do I need notes? Oh, wow. Okay, so let's form a circle. So the 5 politicians and I formed a circle, and we talked for 2 hours about super. Interesting, isn't it? They overcomplicate things all the time. So then we thought, well, it's time to sell the business, because we were in our 60s, and Cheryl and I thought, well, we've worked very hard, haven't we, Cheryl, and now it's time to sell it. Now, if you're in business, selling a business is very, very difficult, because staff of all, you know how staff talk? If you want to start to sell your business and your staff hear about you selling the business, what are they going to do? All the competition will say, oh, Noel and Cheryl are selling the business, you might get someone awful in their place. So you've got to sell it very, very secretly. But when you have a heap of accountants walk in to value the bloody business, it's hard to keep it a secret. And they sign all these documents about confidentiality, but they aren't worth the paper they're written on. Anyway, but eventually we got a good offer from HBOS, Halifax Bank of Scotland, the 400-year-old bank that prints the money. How about that? And the offer was, well, first of all, they never give you the full, they don't give you the full amount in cash. And both Geraldine and Cheryl were adamant, we are not taking shares. I would have taken some shares. No, we're not taking shares. The two women over there, no way. All right. Okay, well, 2/3 down and 2 lots of a sixth. Hang on a second. Then you're going to say, right, now you're coming to run my business. You're taking over my business, and 1/3 of the sale price comes up from you running it. Yes. What if you stuff it up? Well, why would we? Okay. What if we have a clause in the contract, no changes? You must be joking. All right. No unreasonable changes. Lawyers say you can't write that. So in the end, we just took it on trust, didn't we, Cheryl? And it worked. It worked. We sold it. Anyway, that was great fun because then I used to go to Scotland, and I used to go to the HBOS functions and play golf with the governor of the Bank of Scotland, which was nice. He used to take out the old fountain pen and you always signed the first banknote. Then they went broke. Remember the GFC? We sold in cash just before the GFC. Thank you, God, again. That was great fun. Then Lloyds Bank owned us. We get up and say, one more thing too. We all learned about media training. When the takeover was announced, about to be announced, we got half a day's media training. That means a very smart journalist sits you down and you've got to write on the whiteboard 5 messages, and every answer must contain a message. Now I watch all the politicians, I look for the message. Like, you'd say, well, what if you've sold your business to a multinational? It's a great thing for our clients and staff. We do all the message. Anyway, so we had that. Anyway, then when we told the clients, isn't it great, we're now owned by HBOS, famous old Scottish bank. When they went broke, they sold us to Lloyds Bank. Then we told the staff and customers, well, we're now owned by Lloyds Bank. They're even bigger than HBOS. Then they became part of the Bankwest group by some reason. I don't know how that happened. Then the Commonwealth Bank bought Bankwest, so we were like the mower in the garage. All of a sudden, the Commonwealth Bank have got this funny little mob called Whittaker McNaught. They didn't know what to do with us. As I said, I hate bureaucracies. I was staff member 54,161, and all they do is talk. All they do is have phone conferences and do nothing. When Cheryl and I we used to have our annual clients function. We'd meet for coffee. Within 5 minutes had the date, 10 minutes had the venue, and pick it. The Commonwealth Bank could have 6 months of meetings to do that. At the end of the day, I couldn't handle it anymore. So I guess now I'm at the stage we have sold the business. I'm now in the nice years. Our kids are doing very, very well. I had my knees done. I had my knees replaced in 2011. So both Peter and I live up the stairs. That taught me a big thing. You're not immortal. I thought if you jogged your life, you'd never die. There's a great Bob Geldof story. I became very friendly with John van der Wielen, who bought the business. John's a great friend of Bob Geldof. And John emails me. He said, Geldof's in Australia. He's addressing the Association of Super Funds. Find him and brief him. Oh, okay. And that's a good one. Righto. So I looked where Bob was speaking. He was speaking at the Business Chicks Breakfast here. I thought, that's easy. I'll just go to the head table and meet him. He's a magnificent speaker. When he talks about getting coffee for the 15-year-old prostitutes in Dublin whose pimps beat them with iron bars, everyone's in tears. I thought, hang on, how am I going to get to him? Then I saw 2 guys leaning on the rail, just like that, and I thought, they've got to be minders. I walked over, said, hey, Noel Whittaker, John van der Wielen reckons I've got to talk to Bob. Gets out the BlackBerry. Oh, he said, geez. He said, John reckons you're a bloody genius. He needs you, but it's a problem. What's the problem? Well, the speech is at 1 o'clock and Bob's busy all morning. Okay. How are you placed? I said, I'm fine. Okay. Well, is it okay with you if you spend the morning with Bob in the car and go around every interview with him and talk in the car? So Bob and I spent the whole morning together. Now, Bob, do you want to take notes? No, I don't. Bob's a member of Mensa. He's seriously very, very smart. So I spent the morning with Bob, which was very, very nice. 5 minutes to go, sorry, all right, I'll be very quick. From there, I guess the big things now is I'm now an executive producer of the film Think and Grow Rich, the legacy, which traces the history of people whose lives have been changed by the book. Some extraordinary stories. My son James has written the book to go with the movie. James had a major part in making the movie. So he's making a life for himself. He's getting married in Los Angeles, 1st of April, the day we met 40 years ago. How about that? Wonderful. And I've just been put on the board of a public company, VGI, in Sydney, with a market cap of 550 million. So we're still doing God's work, Archbishop. So thank you very much.